So this will be part 2 or continuation of where I last left off in a previous video recording I had done about a month ago regarding a recent hospital visit that I voluntarily complied with the entire time as a intake patient to get an extensive psychiatric evaluation and lasted over 3 weeks. And I was then finally discharged with a diagnosis of generalized anxiety disorder and OCD. Even though I was given 1 milligram of one psychotropic medication, and I'm back on my Synthroid, which is a medication for hypothyroidism, at a low dosage of around 50 micrograms once daily. So I basically, for several years, I've been in and out of the hospital with a diagnosis other than just generalized anxiety disorder and OCD. That means that my mental state or clarity is pretty well off, even though I do manage my symptoms that I would normally have if not I had adhered to a vegan diet and excluded a number of ingredients that trigger certain symptoms that would fall under a bipolar disorder / spectrum disorder, such as manic depressive or insomnia and anxiety. So the number of ingredients that a vegan diet excludes, which I have learned over time that affected my mental state and clarity, is number 1, dairy, because of dairy contains a protein called A1 beta casein, and I was diagnosed with a dairy sensitivity or allergy by a pediatrician when I was very young, at 5 years old. And at the time, while I was growing up, I only had symptoms that were displayed externally, such as eczema on the side of my face around the age of 12. But when I became older, in my early 20s, I started developing a reaction to dairy that was more severe, and such as a burning sensation under my skin and my back, and it would increase pain, cause insomnia, dehydration, almost like a slight anaphylactic reaction, or the way that I would describe the pain kind of like a sunburn, but it would be internal. And those are just 2 symptoms that were physical, physical sensations, other than where I'm also susceptible to it affecting my mental clarity, such as where A1 beta casein, once it goes through the intestinal tract and interacts or gets absorbed through the intestinal flora, where my gut may be more permeable, and it gets into the bloodstream and crosses the blood-brain barrier, interact with the opioid receptors in my brain, and then release a bulk of dopamine, causing like a euphoric sensation. I had discussed this in a earlier recording, but I decided that I'm just going to redo it and talk about it here. Now, people who are said to fall under the autistic spectrum disorders, or those that are diagnosed with a condition that falls under one of the autistic spectrum disorders, like Asperger's, or I'm not even sure what the others would be, but I think PDA is another one. PDA is something demand avoidance syndrome. I forget, something like that, where the person who has PDA would not be able to work a normal job. They normally like to work on their hobbies, and it's a developmental delayed type condition. And so I may even have that, I'm not even sure, because a few of my friends that I know may fall under that type of... Okay, anyways, so back to the A1 beta case, and now how it affects the mental clarity is that it causes interference where it makes one feel euphoric as if they had a glass of wine. It's almost as equivalent as drinking a glass of wine and not realizing it until all of dairy has been excluded from the diet for at least 6 months, and then reintroduced, and see if the person gets the euphoric sensation from it. So that means that they may make bad choices as they're growing older, and that's one of my theories. So now, I also had in the past, in my early 20s, when I was experiencing this noticeable euphoria, that I would also hear the barometric pressure as I would walk down certain aisles in the grocery store in different rooms where there would be no air ventilation necessarily. It would just be like I'd hear the space. So it would be kind of like a illusory or pseudo hallucination as well that would occur. And this can also affect one's mental state. So once I became a vegan first I was a vegetarian in 2007, and then in 2009 I became a vegan, and which excludes dairy and eggs. It took a long time. It took about 6 months to cut down the dairy because of the cravings. Dairy is said to be addictive, just like corn syrup and sugar, or foods containing corn syrup, is addictive in some, or the way that some would describe it, because of the way it metabolizes and interacts with our body chemistry. Now, I also avoid other ingredients found normally in processed foods, such as certain excitotoxins, which are a number of them. If I would list the names of these ingredients. One would be monosodium glutamate, another would be, which is a flavor enhancer. What that does is it's an amino acid or a protein that does naturally occur via fermentation sometimes, like in soy sauce or other fermented foods. However, MSG is mostly when it is in a processed food, such as like a dip, or to enhance the flavor of certain potato chips and canned foods, or those type of things, like chicken soup. What that does is that type of monosodium glutamate is mostly created in a laboratory or in a food factory, where once you ingest it absorbs into the bloodstream. It actually excites or increases the glutamate levels, or the hormone glutamate, in the brain, which also can interfere, or has said to interfere with the way the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland interact to create thyroid stimulating hormone. To interact with the thyroid gland and create thyroid stimulating hormone naturally. So that could be a leading cause of hypothyroidism. In my case, I became hypothyroid due to supplementation of thyroid stimulating hormone medication as a substitute to turn off the way it would naturally develop by the thyroid gland, because I had my endocrinologist in 2003 discovered a non-cancerous nodule with a needlepoint biopsy. So I was prescribed Synthroid or thyroid, levothyroxine, generic, for a period of time. Caused other symptoms like insomnia, and one that I will not state in this video, for a few years, and mimicked symptoms of bipolar disorder for a period of time, I believe, or increased it. So now I'm not sure exactly. Okay, let's see how I would say this. I mentioned monosodium glutamate and how it affects the brain, and then the thyroid, and so, but with me, in my case, I had to continue taking the thyroid medication because I tried discontinuing it after over like a decade of taking it. So my thyroid gland literally shrunk over time, and I would, for about a half a year, I was trying to discontinue the thyroid medicine and do it the natural method, where it would work for a lot of people if they had hypothyroidism and were tried the natural way at a sooner time. Probably. There's also a number of other ingredients that I exclude when I eat vegan, and one of them is fructose, or high fructose corn syrup, which also is said to damage over 700 genes within our DNA, that or 200 of them are related to triggering mood disorders such as bipolar disorder or depression. And there was an article on my biohacking board that discusses how 2 UCLA scientists had discovered that, and through omega-3 essential fatty acid supplementation, in their case, in their study, they used fish oil to actually reverse the damaged genes within that DNA of mice, and discovered that it would actually repair the DNA through omega-3 essential fatty acids. Now, when you're vegan, you exclude eggs or fish and other animal products that can or produce omega-3s, essential fatty acids, where when you're a vegan, you have to, find a supplement such as chia seed or flaxseed oil, walnuts, hemp seed oil. And so it becomes a part of a daily, or in my case, not regularly, but I would include, for example, chia seed or walnuts, hemp seed oil, or one of those omega-3 fatty acids or ingredients containing omega-3 fatty acids within my recipes, but not regularly. And it's also found in green beans and spinach, but the ratios are not as good as in a seed or a nut derived omega-3 and 6 fatty acids. So when you're a vegan and you include those ingredients and you're consciously aware of, adding it to recipes, they're more than likely going to reverse or repair those damaged DNA strands that, if you were to, other than eat a standard American diet where you would normally not have chia seed, walnuts, or flaxseed oil, or hemp seed oil, or even fish oil, unless you're a pescatarian, that once you include those ingredients in your recipes or as a supplement in your shake, a smoothie or something, more than likely people who do eat the standard American diet end up with bipolar disorder, or because the fructose, if they eat processed foods containing fructose and do not supplement with the omega-3s. When you're a vegan, if you eat organic, you exclude the fructose and the corn syrup, and you would then just naturally be supplementing with omega-3 fatty acids, which would repair those damaged DNA strands or genes that affect those mood disorders. And so another thing is, I'm very consciously aware of ingredients that increase serotonin, such as where tahini is the natural source of tryptophan. And when you're a vegan, and you do not normally have as much saturated fat when you consume vegan food, other than from nut butters. And saturated fat causes interference or malabsorption, or makes it more difficult for tryptophan to get into the bloodstream and then interact with serotonin or increase serotonin in our brain. So, which is a natural anti-anxiety or kind of has an antidepressant effect. Now, one other thing is vegans normally get a lot of magnesium in their diet, like this low glycemic agave nectar. This type is raw. It's not pasteurized, where there's rumors around the internet saying that if it's not raw, most agave nectar, if it becomes fructose, and so from the heating process. Now, agave nectar is a natural source of magnesium. Magnesium helps those that may have insomnia. It's a mineral. And another ingredient I supplement with is ginger to reduce anxiety. Now, ginger contains melatonin, and the melatonin in the ginger and the tryptophan in the tahini or the rice milk. But with ginger and melatonin, what that would do is reset the sleep-wake cycle, where if one were to have, let's say, make a homemade ginger teriyaki soy sauce and eat a low-carb carbohydrate, maybe like rice pasta, not wheat pasta, or if they supplement with a ginger chew or a lozenge about 15 minutes before going to sleep, and while dimming the lights for about that length of time ahead of time, and then just sit there and relax and then turn off the light. The ginger increases melatonin, and what melatonin does is can you not talk in there? I'm doing this right now. What melatonin does is resets the sleep-wake cycle. So, no, just be quiet. So, once the lights are off after consuming it in a dimly lit room for 15 minutes, it helps, in addition to having something with magnesium and tryptophan, it helps those that have insomnia fall asleep, and once it becomes daylight the following morning in your room and the sun's hitting your eyelids, the melatonin excites the mind to know when it's time to wake up. So that's what melatonin does, but the magnesium is actually an anti-inflammatory, and it's a muscle relaxant. And the tryptophan increases serotonin, which reduces anxiety. I think ginger has tryptophan in it also, I'm not sure. But now, if you're eating gluten-free, if you're gluten-free vegan, a staple would be brown rice and quinoa, or two staples. Also, rolled oats, or in general oats. Now, when you're gluten-free vegan, you may want to supplement with the B complex vitamin, because I think vitamin B6 is normally found in other grains such as glutinous grains like barley, wheat. No, I can't really remember any of the others, but I know there's buckwheat, which is gluten-free, but that doesn't contain as much B6. B6 is actually for dream recall, I believe. And there's another vitamin, a few other B vitamins that are short, so it's important to maybe supplement with a B complex if you become a gluten-free vegan. I do know that. Now, peanut butter is a good source of niacin, which is vitamin B3. And in orthomolecular medicine, or what was used for a period of time to treat mood disorders, which was otherwise known as megadosing with vitamins, minerals, supplements. That would it was vitamin B3 was famous for reducing certain symptoms that would happen or occur in various mood disorders. I don't really remember what those symptoms would be, but they say vitamin B3 or niacinamide, which is found in nuts and seeds, reduce the symptoms of certain mood disorders. So that's another good thing about being a vegan. And for several years I was taking medicine, and while I was taking the medicine and as it was being tapered down to a smaller dosage, I was eating a vegan, strictly vegan, and I was very knowledgeable and studied about these ingredients over time while I was taking the medication. But eventually I was able to come off of it. But there were a number of times where I had, went back and forth, felt like a failure and everything else. And now, another thing is when you're a vegan, it's almost a requirement to supplement with vitamin B12, where if you're having a standard American diet, you may not be consciously aware of supplementing with B12 because it's found normally in, let's say, animal products. They get it from the soil. The animals, when they graze, or, the food off the ground, they get their vitamin B12 from the soil that they consume off the plant matter. And humans, we get it. If you have the standard American way of eating, you'd get it from the animal. So, but it's not as good as getting it directly from the source, like from spirulina. Now this has I can't get the camera to focus. %110 vitamin B12. That's if you take 12 tablets daily. I only take 3 and I don't take them often. But you can get B12 from also nutritional yeast, which is a ingredient that is sometimes added to, almost a lot of the time added to tofu scramble, which is a very traditional vegan entree, or it's very famous. Tofu scramble is an introductory scrambled egg substitute. It's one of my favorite meals, and nutritional yeast adds like a cheesy flavor, and it's also used in kale chips if you make a cheese sauce, or if you also could make a non-dairy cheese. In general, nutritional yeast is often used in that. So you're getting you can get your supplement of B12 from nutritional yeast or from spirulina naturally. Other than that, you can also take a supplement like a lozenge that I normally would take a B12 supplement like from Veg Life, the company Veg Life, and that they come in like two variety of flavors. One is orange, another is cherry. In that you just, put that under your tongue, let it dissolve, enter the bloodstream. So vegans, they require these ingredients, like the chia seed, hemp seed, flaxseed oil, walnuts. They include these in their recipes, sometimes as egg substitutes or just as a supplement for omega-3 and 6, where in a standard American diet, people would just not be as consciously aware of supplementing with those, and would be also